Hello, my fellow students of Magick. I am the Silver Witch, and in this video, we are going to be talking about the basics, but also the most important thing to remember about magic. So, there are different interpretations to what magic is about. There are interpretations, obviously, such as in Harry Potter, where basically all you do is just cast some Latin word and you'll be able to make some spell where it causes something to happen, and that's the basic thing of it, and that's a way to interpret it, but I'm just gonna have to say no. No, not really. No. I mean, it's a beginner thing, but it's not really how magic necessarily works. It's not really about just naming some spell and something just happens. Or that it's, in other ways, that it's also sort of a genetic thing. That's actually something that I do not necessarily believe. It's more something where just it's based on the individual. So Harry Potter, no, just no. But in the other essence, there are other interpretations that are more accurate to me in the sense of magic. Um, for example, on my gaming channel, I played a game called Banner Saga, and I just finished Banner Saga 2. And the idea of magic in for their weavers is that the world is made up of a tapestry, and the idea of the weavers or the magic users is basically that they just look at the patterns of the weaves that are in the world, and once they see and notice those weaves, which take years to learn and notice, what happens is they can use it to either fix the different patterns or the different things that are out of place, or to actually kind of purposefully mess with the tapestry a little bit in order to make something happen, such as lightning strike from the sky at particular positions and such. But that it also can be a bit uncontrollable and such. There are other, probably the more accurate to me is probably the Warhammer version or the League of Legends version of Magic, is that it is not necessarily something that you manipulate and control, but that it is something that has its own entity and its own spirit, although kind of to diverge from the Warhammer version, no, it is not something that if you use too much of it or become potent enough with it, that you become some sort of demon or whatever, and I would love to talk about the original meaning of demon at some point, but I'm afraid I'm gonna have to hold off on that for a different video, and it might just have to be a little bit later on. But for the sake of this video, we're just gonna be talking about magic itself. So, to start off, magic is not something that you can just control. It is not something that you can manipulate. If anything, it is not meant to be used for manipulation in any way whatsoever. Magic is simply just its own being, its own autonomous being that flows in its own way in everything that surrounds us and everything that surrounds the spiritual and other realms of the spiritual worlds. For example, it is important to remember that magic is not simply just going to be coerced just because somebody says, I want this thing to happen. It's not really going to listen to you on that. It's something that needs cooperation. It has to have a reason to work with you. If you're not willing to work with them or build a relationship, then, well, why are you actually trying to do anything with it? You're just basically asking them to do something for free, and that's not really how magic works. The way magic works is that it has its own life, so you have to respect that it has its own life and its own existence. And the way you do that is by working with the magic. You have to acknowledge that it is its own thing, that it is its own autonomous entity. You have to acknowledge that even if you are not working with another spirit or a divine deity or any other otherworldly being, you have to acknowledge that magic has its own reason, that it is there simply because it is, and that it deserves to be given the same sort of respect as anyone or anything else should. So magic is something that you need to connect with. You need to form a bond with it, rather. So once you do that, and the way you do that, really, is to start off with this. The first thing you have to do is simply just clear your mind, and no, that doesn't mean just blanking your mind out, because once you do that, it just makes it harder to actually have a clear mind. What you really need to do is just have it focused. You can't just make it completely empty, so just keep it focused on the goal at hand, And it might be a little bit harder for people whose minds tend to wander a lot, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's something that I actually have, and it's difficult for my mind to stay on track, but you don't necessarily need to try and control that, but rather you need to try and work on having your mind a little bit more focused on things around you and with things that you are trying to keep on track. So the thing you need to do is simply just clear your mind, keep it focused, and then you also need to feel yourself connect with the magic. You need to be able to feel a sense of magic, and at first, it might not be that easy, but the way that I can describe it best once you figure it out is you feel this sort of energy pulsing through you. And I know it sounds a little bit crazy or, culty, even though that's not necessarily the correct definition for such a word at the moment. But commonly, yes, it would kind of sound a little bit like a bit out there, since that's the way we commonly associate with the word cult, even though sociologically it's not actually how it's defined. But anyway, my point being is that you will feel this sort of essence flowing through you, and that is where you start to realize that you are starting to form a bond in a relationship with magic. And once you do that, from there you simply just offer your own energy. And no one, this isn't necessarily just offering your own life source or anything like that. So don't worry about that part. But what you are offering is that you are offering your energy, thinking of it like mana, really. So basically, it's just like that. You just use mana, and it can be a bit tiring, it can be a bit exhausting, because after a while, once you've used enough of your mana or energy, well, then you're just going to feel a bit tired. And that is basically the time where you simply just need to recharge and take care of yourself, and just allow yourself to recuperate and be ready. If you ever feel like casting another spell or using magic for any other essence or need. Um, you always have to remember that even if you are practicing magic, it's the same thing as with your body. You don't want to overtrain it, because once you do, you're simply just going to burn yourself out, or you might just do something that might actually be harmful to your body. So the same goes with using your spiritual energy and energy that your spirit uses. You can work it out, but you don't want to actually cause any harm to it. So whenever you're practicing magic, do not overdo it. Do not overexert yourself or overextend yourself. Just simply take care of yourself and practice whenever you have the time and whenever you have the energy, but don't overdo it. So the next thing you have to do when you are making a relationship with magic, and when you are cooperating with magic, not using, you want to be able to follow its current. You want to be able to follow the flow that it goes, and the current that it makes. You just simply follow it, and you show your dedication to how much you want to be able to have your need acquired through the help of magic, and how serious you are about building a relationship with magic, and how you wish to be able to learn from it. It's not about just getting needs, it's also about learning what you can about the world around you, about the spiritual realms. It's basically all about acquiring knowledge, really. So when you are a witch, not only are you following your own spiritual path, your own path in life, but you're also trying to learn as much as you can and better yourself through magic and through other spiritual practices. And being able to follow the current of the waves or winds of magic, it is very important in any form of magic you are practicing in, whether it be spells, whether it be rituals, or whether it even be prayers. So, little fun thought. Even if you are praying, you are committing witchcraft. Important thing to keep in mind. So, anyway, uh, along with that, I also want to mention how spells and rituals work in its own way as well. Spells don't necessarily work based on like reciting an entire poem or learning names. Really, it's all about the connection. So you can do it in those ways if that is more familiar to you. But for some, it might just be about evoking that energy and being for example, what I do, I simply just evoke the energy, and I use my energy in order to perform the need or task that I wish. So, like when I am trying to bless something, whenever I am trying to commit some form of magic or whatnot, it is simply just me evoking the energy in order to allow for that to happen. For others, it might simply just be better that they recite a poem that pretty much enunciates what it is that they desire from magic. Sometimes it is better to simply just say the name. It depends on what works best for you. And whatever works best for you is actually going to be the way that works best for you. So it is that way that you should practice in it. It doesn't hurt to do things a little that are a little bit more difficult, obviously, but whatever is more comfortable for you, that is the way that magic will be most potent for you. So don't try to hurry yourself in trying to be better to be as good as you possibly can, as quickly as you possibly can, because magic is not about that. It is about going at your own pace, going at your own way, and simply just following how that pacing will go. So you aren't going to just be trying to speedrun the entire thing because who knows how long that's actually going to take. You need to properly pace yourself and be able to learn when to slow down and when maybe you might need to pick up the pace. So it's basically all about just finding your own pacing, finding your own way. Don't try to rush yourself. Just simply work the way that feels best for you. And that's pretty much it. Um, Another thing to talk about with the different forms of magic, we'll be getting to the different classes of magic in a different episode. They will each be their own individual video. But when it comes to things such as spells or rituals, you might see things where, like, you need these particular items or you need these particular ingredients and etc. etc. You might find these online or whatever. But the thing about those is that they are ways that people find as best interpretations for them. So, whenever you're looking for items for rituals and such, really the thing you need to know is you need to do some research, obviously. If you are working with a spirit, you need to do some research on that spirit to see what works best for them when you are cooperating with them, but also what makes the most sense to you. So, like, say, for example, you are trying to perform a sort of water ritual or whatever because you're doing elemental magic, or actually, something that might make more sense. Let's just say you want to perform a sort of druid ritual, and you're trying to perform some sort of earthly blessing for your garden or whatnot. What you would have is you would obviously acquire some maybe herbs or maybe some soil, some plants, some plant essence, things like that. And if you are working with a spirit, say perhaps you are working with either Mother Earth from the Celtic pagan pantheon, or maybe you are working with Gaia or Geb. Perhaps maybe something that is relevant to any of these deities obviously would make the most sense. So, whatever you see in relation to them would obviously be helpful because, and of course, I mentioned what makes the most sense to you, obviously, because it presents to these figures what it is you think about them and what makes them more meaningful to you. Like for Gaia in the Hellenistic pantheon, or Terra, how she might be in Rome, um, the way you would portray her is important to her. Like, say, you are actually thinking of her as the benevolent, kind, nature loving, primordial being, and that is basically how she will see that you see her, and she will probably appreciate that. But also remember that the opposite can happen if you have something that portrays them in an opposite light that or a way they do not actually like. Well, it might not. You might not get their help, and if anything, they might actually not want. They might actually have think of you less. They might do something. I don't know. But yeah, it is important that when you are working with spirits or deities, that you always be respectful, or that you work with the deities or spirits that you actually want to work with. Because if you're doing something like, I don't know, maybe contacting a deity or spirit that you actually don't like, and you are purposefully trying to piss them off, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, I've done it before myself, but it's not like I summoned them specifically just to tell them off. It's more like they just so happen to be in the area, and of course, when they decide to be in the area, or when I basically just don't do it on purpose, is my point. And while I may have done it, I didn't summon them because you don't want to summon them if you are just trying to trash on them. That is something you don't want to do because that can only end badly. But if they are in the area and you happen to, but It's also important that you also be careful around spiritual activities. Obviously, you don't want to piss off anybody you don't want to, because you have to remember some of these beings can be extremely powerful, and if they happen to gain enough control around you, then it can only end badly, and you really don't want to have that happen. So, in other words, you definitely don't want them to influence your life in a very negative way, because they can do very terrible things, and you don't want any of that to happen. Anyway, so other things that could work for Magic is that not only are you offering your own energy, not only are you offering offerings and ingredients and items that help in the ritual, but you're also offering a relationship. You're offering companionship and an equal partnership in order to cooperate for this need that you have. Think of it like Full Metal Alchemist equivalent exchange. When you are asking for something, you are trying to give something that is that is equal in return, like an equal barter. So when you are asking for, like, hey, can I have a little bit of help in my economic financial situation, you also want to be able to offer enough energy for what it is that you need. Although, now that I think about it, some people might think, oh, then maybe I should just offer everything that I have, and maybe it will work. And I mean, if that's what you feel like, maybe, but just like I said earlier, don't forget to take care of yourself. Don't forget that burnout is definitely a thing that can happen, and you definitely don't want to debilitate your spiritual self. So, do take good care of yourself. Do not offer absolutely everything, but because it's not actually going to work out well for you. So do keep in mind that magic is something you must be careful about, because sometimes if you overexert yourself, you might, and you're not exactly ready to offer up as much energy as you're trying to offer up, it might have some negative consequences along the line, and it's best to avoid those negative consequences. But which actually does relate a little bit into the Warhammer version of Magic, because like sometimes you might whenever a mage is miscasting, it can actually damage them, or it could do much worse, like make them into an evil chaotic demon. Again, we'll get into a video about the original interpretation and meaning of demon, but that'll be for a different video. But yes, that is basically all I have to say about Magic. Thing to take out of it: Magic is its own being and its own entity, so treat it with respect as such. Always work to cooperate rather than try to manipulate Magic in a certain way. You have to follow the lead of Magic. Be sure to prepare meaningful offerings of energy or magic, and if you're working with a spirit or deity, offer what is meaningful to them. Sacrifices can be important. Sometimes food offerings can help for certain deities and spirits. As we know, there are definitely times where sacrifices have been offered to certain pantheons of gods. Offerings of food have worked for spirits as well, as we might see in the Day of the Dead. And there's also Hallows Eve and original pagan interpretations of those holidays where food offerings have been given as well. And it is always important, basically, to just keep in mind that whatever way you work with it, you do so in your own way, in a way that is meaningful to you, not simply just doing whatever, just keep that in mind, but more rather just what is meaningful to you. Not a joke thing, because if you try to do it as a joke, I'm just going to warn you right here, it's not going to end well. But anyway, that's all I have to say about magic. I hope you've learned something valuable today for your path as a witch, or as somebody who is interested in learning about witchcraft and its meaning. And I definitely hope that you have learned something valuable in those areas. In the comment section, I am very happy to hear what you guys have to talk about, so long as it is respectful or in a way that is trying to help maybe cover some information that I didn't cover in this video, maybe help other witches or other curious people learn more about what things like this can actually mean. And of course, be respectful. Be sure to give a like on this video if you felt that this information was helpful. And subscribe if you want to see more videos like this on spirituality, religion, paganism, or other acts of magic. And until next time, blessed be and so mote it be.